Cameron is a software engineer for Microsoft, and she was kind enough to allow for me to pick her brain for a while on what it's really like working as a software engineer. So if this is a career that you are considering, in this interview, Cameron is going to speak on what it's like venturing into the career and what it's like working in the career, as well as some very helpful information on the compensation of a software engineer. Enjoy. All right, so Cameron, so what is an engineer and what specifically is a software engineer?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's different types of engineers. We have mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, software engineer. I think at the real basis, an engineer is someone who puts things together, like assembles things. And so software engineer is for assembling software, creating, managing, architecting software.
Wow. So, it's probably sad that I've never actually Googled what an engineer is, but that makes sense. It's someone who puts things together.
Mm-hmm.
So a software engineer puts together a software.
Yeah. Is
that always inclusive for a software engineer to be able to code for like an app and a website, or are those two different, different types of coding that someone who codes would go into?
Yeah, so those are two different types of coding. However, similar to like painting, you can do whatever you're interested in, whatever you're good at type thing. So there are a lot of engineers who do apps and websites and like cloud computing. However, depending on the particular, you look excited, depending on the particular career or company, they will want you to specialize. So if we're thinking about, let's take Headspace, for example, like the really popular meditation app, they're probably going to look for application developers specifically, as that's where their focus is. But in a large company like a Microsoft or Google, they will have a plethora of different positions. So you can definitely apply to whatever you feel best at.
What is cloud developing from a software engineer standpoint, Cameron?
Yeah, great question. So I actually work in the cloud myself. So yeah, perfect person to ask here. Yeah. So I work for Microsoft Azure. So Azure is Microsoft's cloud. We also have Google Cloud Platform with Google, and then AWS for Amazon. So I work for Azure, and there's a couple different types of cloud engineering. The kind that I do is specific to providing services for our Azure customers, right? So we want to make sure customers that are coming to Microsoft or Azure are able to carry out the actions that they need. And so that's the work that I do specifically for Microsoft.
Okay. So next question then, what does a typical day of work look like for you, Cameron? What are you doing between those office hours?
Yeah, a lot. So in the work that I do, I work on the front end. So I do a lot of web development. So I could be updating a page, creating a new page. We have patterns. So I could be updating a pattern, which is like a flow, if you will. Like we want a user to click this button and then go there. So updating like a pattern, fixing bugs, and then of course collaborating with other engineers on all of the various things I just mentioned.
Okay. So this is a sidebar. So you work on front end development. Can you just explain the difference between a back end software developer and a front end?
Yeah, most definitely. So when you're thinking of any type of engineering, we discussed those. You have your web development, you have your application, you have your cloud development. You're still going to have like front end or back end, depending on how big the application or web app or cloud businesses. And so your backend is going to be your database. So any like literal SQL database management or whatever database system they use. And then that's also the API layer. So what front-end engineers use to query data is the API. So on the back end is the database and the API, and the front end is more of the interface that that customers interact with. So think of like a web page. So again, in my work as a front-end engineer, I do a lot of modifying web pages, creating like web elements, and then I will make calls to the API that the backend created to get data.
Okay, so all right, so front end is more like interface experience, things that the user who goes on the website sees. Correct. And back end is more, and I might be butchering this, it's in my own term. Back end is more like the rules behind what causes what to happen, like when someone clicks a button. Did I explain that right? No.
So from your explanation, that's actually still front end. So front end is about, so it's a lot more work than people first imagine. So front end is about like something as design centric as where does this button go? What color is the button? What is the button going to say? But it's also what happens when you click the button. All of that is front end. And then when we get in the back end, it's strictly data and data management.
Whew. Okay, so I'm obviously not in coding. All right. So I'm 35 years old. I've never coded a day in my life. I'm not proud to say this. I had a computer science class in 10th grade. I probably cheated the entire way through, and someone else literally probably did all of my assignments. So like I'm completely oblivious to coding. But, and this is true, I'm actually interested in coding. Like I'm seriously considering like going through some type of coding course and learning it. Yeah. And I don't even know, I don't necessarily want to work as a software developer per se. I just feel like it's such a powerful skill to understand. And I want that. And I want my kids to understand coding, like hands down. I guess what I'm asking is, 35-year-old don't understand coding is telling someone who's seasoned and skilled in coding, hey, I want to get into this. What is like the probability of like someone who is more in age to just start from scratch and then literally become a software developer?
Definitely a high probability. Like we see it often in the field because with software engineering, you don't have to have a college degree to jump in. If you're able to learn it and pick it up, you have just as much as a fighting chance as I do on getting a job.
Interesting.
For people who are interested in joining the field who like didn't go to college for it, I would really recommend understanding what your goal is. You definitely can take some classes or do a boot camp to understand the language of coding, just for you to understand it. You also could do it to build your own application. You could do it to get a job. So really understand like how much working knowledge you want of that.
Very interesting. Okay, so that brings me to this question then. What were some of the struggles of actually venturing into a career in coding? And just to give context to where I'm coming from when I ask that, I view someone, and this is just my view, I view someone who codes as someone who's very smart. Like that's just the persona that I have. You know, I think of it as if I'm like in a doctor's office and like the doctor walks in, I'm like, oh yeah, this is a very smart person, you know, to be able to become a doctor. That's how I look at someone in coding. So what were like some of the struggles from the time you decided that you want to be a software engineer, and then all the way up to actually being able to get to the point where you can land a job at Microsoft and be there 3 years?
Yeah. Oh, great questions. What were some of the biggest challenges upon deciding I want to be a software engineer and then getting my job? Honestly, I will say the rigor. It is a highly competitive field, and while there are a lot of jobs, competing for like those top tech jobs is like a very like prestigious like thing. So the competition is stiff. So I'll say that was one of the biggest challenges. And honestly, morale is another really big challenge. Imposter syndrome is extremely common in the tech field. Imposter syndrome is people who get the job but don't feel like they deserve the job or don't feel like they're supposed to be there.
Oh.
So I would say those are the two biggest challenges, really.
Cameron, that is so interesting that you say that, right? And I guess who is that person who gets a job with a company like Microsoft and then like they know, yeah, I deserve this, like right? I mean, that's a good question because I guess I never used that terminology. I've been seeing it on like LinkedIn since I went into tech, like the imposter syndrome. That was my first time ever like hearing that, like within the last year. And I guess I have that maybe too much. Now that you like explained that, I think I have that too much, right? Gosh, wow, okay. So that's interesting, but apparently you must belong there because you made 3 years at Microsoft, right?
I did just make 3 years, yes.
Okay, so let me ask you this. What are pros and cons of being a software engineer? And so again, context, you don't have to answer this, but like, I don't know if you plan on doing this forever, right? Like, I don't know if you plan on doing this 20, 30 years from now. Like, you're in and you're like, well, I hate this. I'm about to go start a business. I don't know, whatever it is, right? But just since you've been working in the field, in terms of when you wake up in the morning, you're getting ready to go to work, or if you're finishing your evening, what are aspects of the job where you're proud of, you're happy about, you're satisfied, you're content? And then what are some of the things that maybe it's kind of like a thorn there to where it's like, I wish I didn't have to do this. I don't really feel like doing this as much. So just pros and cons.
Yeah. Okay. So I have to state the obvious. Pros is the salary and compensation. I think everyone knows that engineers get paid well, and that's very true. It's another pro that the work environment is very laxed. Up until recently, a lot of the companies had like work from home, like really awesome like work from home policies as well. Depending on your specific interests, the people can be really cool to work with. I would say those are about all the pros.
Yeah.
The cons are the work can be very, very challenging. So one thing that I think is funny, a lot of people who are engineers specifically for big tech companies, when they first get the job, they are bombarded with how much work it is. And so that's something they don't really tell you. Like, it's pretty common to work a 10-hour day, maybe like once a week or so. Like that's pretty normal, especially starting off in your career. So that's a con. I would say a pro, as in, I mentioned one pro was the people you work with. That also can be a con, depending, but I'm sure that's consistent across any working environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd really just say the cons for engineering specifically are the intense workload. But hopefully that does go down the more senior you become, the more interested you become.
Okay. I'm just curious, when did you start learning coding? Like, what age or grade were you in?
I started in college.
Really?
Year.
Not in high school. I would I'm telling you, I would have been banking on you saying, "Oh yeah, ninth, 10th grade of high school, I started coding." So you
I
started in college.
wish.
Is when you
Yeah,
started learning.
my high school didn't actually offer any coding programs, which I thought was interesting. So yeah, I started freshman in college.
Really? And so I know I'm because I only have what do I have? 2 questions left. I'm about to veer just for one moment.
Sure.
That wasn't like boring learning coding. I guess I guess what I'm trying to figure what type of personality is there a common personality in software engineering?
For sure. Most definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, the like umbrella description I would give is super attention to detail, um, slightly introverted, and just super emphasis on attention to detail, because that's what you need to be when you're a coder. You need to make sure you triple check things. And then I think, as you mentioned, a lot of people just have like natural, a lot of people can naturally be a little ADD or OCD, and like that actually works out in your benefit when you're coding. So I would say
Wow.
that would be like the personality trait.
Wow. Okay. Okay. All right. And just this will be real quick. What is like, I guess, a typical pay progression of a software engineer from the time they, I don't know, I guess land their first job to, let's say, like a 5-year period?
Are we talking salary or total compensation?
What total compensation? Yeah, just whatever comes with being a software engineer from a compensation standpoint.
Yeah, I think it's really important to talk about total comp, as like it's not so visible, and it should be, especially for people of color, to know more about that. So normally, if you are getting a job at a reputable tech company, you'll get three things. So you'll get salary, you'll get stock options, and then you'll also get a bonus, like a signing bonus. And so for depending on the company and what level you're coming at, your salary could range anywhere from like 60,000 to 100,000. I mean, again, depending on what level, of course. The higher levels, we're talking like the 200,000 and 300,000s. But I
Right.
guess we'll say for an intro person, anywhere from like 60 to 100,000 as like a base salary, and then signing bonus. You can negotiate anywhere from like 5,000 to 20,000, and then stock you can negotiate anywhere from like 10,000 to honestly upwards of like 150,000. So yeah,
In stock.
in stock, yes.
Really? I had
Companies are a lot more willing to negotiate stock and signing bonus. So let's say I got an offer and it was 70K base, and I had asked for, instead of 70, I want 100,000. Companies are not as open to making that jump, but let's just say same numbers. I got 70K in stock and I asked for 100K in stock instead. They're a lot more open to that negotiation.
All right, I got to do a whole homework stretch on that now, Cameron. Wow. Okay, so the stock part, got it. Yeah, see, just a sidebar. So I'm in tech. I'm in tech sales, and I've went in, I guess, an interesting route of what I've been doing. I'm in a contractor role with, it's a major tech company. It's with Intuit. And my thing is, I've been like staying there kind of like on purpose, but I'm like an overachiever. So, I'm like just putting up stupid numbers, right? Just stupid numbers. And so that I can get like that permanent position with this major conglomerate. Yeah, and to my understanding, they have stock there, but I wouldn't even thought about like considering negotiating that. Like from a
Most
compensation
definitely.
standpoint, but I know that they do stock. I know, so yeah, have to explore the career field more. Thank you for that, Cameron.
Of course, at minimum, I would always ask for minimum 20,000 more in stock.
Understood. Okay, thank you. Okay. So my final question: what are and we kind of touched on this earlier, what are the career paths of being a software developer? So whether it's someone my age or someone in high school watching this right now, they're about to go into college, what are all of the different, not all of them, but what are different avenues that they could end up kind of landing in and working in from a long-term perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. So once you acquire a job as a software engineer, there are now two different tracks you can take. So you can be an individual contributor. So that means you're working under someone, coding on a team, or you can go the people manager route. And so you're working towards becoming a manager and having people under you, and like leading projects and like telling them what to code. So it's individual contributor or IC. I'm sorry, individual contributor, IC, or people manager. Those are the two routes that you start to take. And then you continue to get promotions and go up the ladder. And then once you get a certain place is like where the two kind of split.
I would have never even thought about from that route. Maybe that is the arena I should go into, the people management on the coding. I don't know. No, that's cool. So what about, so is full stack, not full, yes, because I see that terminology, full stack, back end, front end. Like, do software engineers in general typically understand like all of those arenas? Or do you have software engineers who only understand back end coding and others who only understand front end coding?
Yeah, definitely the latter. It's typically not normal for a software engineer in corporate America to specialize in both. I think you see that more on the collegiate side as they're like learning and like exploring and stuff. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, Cameron, I so appreciate your time in this interview. Thank you for allowing me to drag you out on camera. I know this random dude. I'm going after like software engineers. They're like, this dude, like, I don't want to be in front of a camera, Justin. But thank you so much, Cameron. And Tech family, until we meet again, we'll see you on the next video.